The enemy's mistake. The Zarketh Empire had conquered many worlds. They crushed weaker species, took their resources, and expanded their rule across the galaxy. Their warships were massive, their soldiers ruthless. No planet had ever stood against them for long. Now, they had set their sights on Earth. The Supreme War Council of Zarketh believed humans were just another primitive race. Their technology was advanced, but not as advanced as the Zarketh. Their fleet was strong, but not strong enough. Their armies were brave, but bravery did not win wars. Power did. The Zarketh commander, of Zalvar, stood on the bridge of his warship, the Doomed Spear. The fleet had just arrived at the edge of the Sol system. 50 powerful warships hovered in formation, their weapons armed. Zalvar's second-in-command, Officer Drenak, smirked. The humans do not even know we are here. Their defenses are weak. Their fleet is small. Zalvar nodded. This will be over quickly. The fleet moved forward, passing the orbit of Pluto. They expected no resistance, no warning. Instead, a message appeared on every Zarketh screen. A voice, strong, cold, and human, spoke in perfect Zarkethian language. You wanted war. Then war is what you'll get. The bridge fell silent. Zalvar's claws tightened. Who sent that message? He demanded. A technician checked the readings. Unknown, sir. It came from multiple locations. They hacked into our systems. Zalvar's eyes narrowed. Impossible. But it was true. In seconds, their long-range sensors flickered. Distortions spread across their radar. Something was wrong. Then the first explosion hit. A Zarketh cruiser, Bloodfang, burst into flames. A missile had struck it from nowhere. A second cruiser, Ironclaw, was torn apart by railgun fire. Warnings flashed across the screens. Ships were under attack. Zalvar turned to his officers. Who is attacking us? Drenak's face turned pale. The humans, sir. Their ships are here. Zalvar looked at the screen. It was true. Human warships had appeared from the darkness of space. They were smaller than Zarketh ships, but fast and deadly. They had hidden behind asteroids, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Zalvar snarled. Destroy them. Zarketh weapons fired, but the human ships moved too fast. They weaved through the battlefield, dodging laser fire and launching precise counterattacks. Another Zarketh ship exploded. The Supreme War Council had said humans were weak. But here, in the cold darkness of space, humans were showing something else. They were hunters. Zalvar gritted his teeth. Send reinforcements. Push forward. But then, the second wave began. Earth's hidden defense stations powered up. From behind Mars, a massive railgun fired a projectile at near-light speed. It tore through the Zarketh flagship Shadow Wrath, cutting it in half. Human drones, controlled by artificial intelligence, swarmed into battle. They crashed into Zarketh shields, overloading them. In the chaos, more human warships appeared, surrounding the enemy. The Zarketh fleet had walked into a trap. Zalvar's hands trembled. How? How did they know we were coming? Drenak's voice shook. Sir, they were waiting for us. Zalvar's eyes widened. The humans had known about the invasion. They had prepared. And now they were proving that war was not just about power. It was about strategy. It was about intelligence. It was about survival. As another explosion rocked the Doomed Spear, Zalvar realized the terrible truth. The humans were not the weak ones. The Zarketh had made a mistake, a fatal mistake. And now, humanity would teach them what true warfare meant. The ambush. Zalvar gripped the command rail as another explosion shook the Doomed Spear. Warning sirens howled through the bridge. Smoke filled the air, and officers scrambled to regain control. The humans had turned the battlefield into a slaughterhouse. This is impossible. Drenak gasped, his reptilian eyes wide with fear. How can they be this strong? Zalvar didn't answer. His mind raced. The humans fought differently. The Zarkith Empire always relied on superior firepower, overwhelmed the enemy, crushed them with brute force. But humanity, they were something else. They didn't fight wars. They hunted. Another Zarkith battleship exploded in a bright flash. Human ships moved like shadows, striking from different angles, disappearing before counterattacks could land. Every time the Zarkith fleet tried to regroup, their sensors glitched, their communications scrambled. Zalvar's claws dug into the control panel. Find their command ship. We kill their leader. We break their forces. A technician, scales trembling, ran his fingers over the control screen. We can't, sir. They're using electronic warfare. Our systems are failing. Zalvar's mind snapped to a single realization. This wasn't just a battle. It was a carefully planned ambush. They knew we were coming. A deep, sinking feeling filled his chest. Had they been betrayed? No. Something worse. The humans had been waiting for this moment. Zalvar turned to his tactical officer. Order all ships to break formation. We need to regroup before. The lights flickered. The bridge screens went dark for 3 seconds. Then a single image appeared. A human. His face was calm, cold. His uniform was black, with a silver emblem on the chest, a symbol of Earth's defense force. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, stared directly at Zalvar. Then he spoke. You came here expecting an easy war. Zalvar's throat tightened. The voice was steady, unwavering. No fear, no hesitation. You came with fire and steel, the human continued. You thought we would kneel. The Zarkith officers froze. Even the sirens, the alarms, the chaos, they all seemed distant now. The human leaned slightly forward, his next words like a death sentence. But you forgot one thing. Silence. The human's eyes narrowed. We are humanity, and we do not lose. The transmission cut. Then, all hell broke loose. A second wave of human warships surged from the asteroid belt. Hidden railgun platforms activated, firing hypervelocity projectiles that ripped through Zarkith armor like paper. Human boarding craft launched, attaching to Zarkith vessels like parasites. Their hulls were breached within minutes, and squads of heavily armed soldiers stormed inside. The Zarkith, used to facing weaker species, had never encountered anything like this. These humans didn't just attack. They infiltrated. They hunted. Zalvar spun toward Drenek. Get us out of here. Drenek's fingers danced over the control panel. Warp drive is disabled. Sir, we're trapped. Trapped. That word echoed in Zalvar's skull like a death knell. One by one, Zarkith ships were being picked apart. Some detonated from within, their own systems hacked and turned against them. Others were captured, their crews taken. The battlefield was no longer a war zone. It was a massacre. For the first time in his life, Zalvar felt something he had never known. Fear. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were sending a message. And the Zarkith had no choice but to listen. The battlefield evolves. Zalvar had always believed war was simple. Power crushed weakness. Numbers overwhelmed strategy. But now, standing on the burning bridge of the Doom Spear, he saw the truth. The humans had rewritten the rules. A nearby Zarkith warship, the Venom Claw, split apart as a kinetic round tore through its reactor core. The explosion sent shockwaves across the battlefield, rocking the Doom Spear violently. Officers were thrown to the ground, screaming. Drenek pulled himself up, blood running from a gash on his forehead. Sir, we have to retreat. We cannot fight them like this. Zalvar's claws dug into the command panel. His mind raced. Retreat. The Zarkith Empire had never retreated. But what choice did they have? Across the battlefield, the humans were adapting, changing tactics mid-battle, shifting strategies in real time. The Zarkith fired heavy plasma cannons. Humanity responded by deploying energy-reflecting drones, turning their own weapons against them. The Zarkith launched fighter squadrons. Humanity jammed their targeting systems, making them blind and useless. The Zarkith tried to regroup. Humanity divided them, cutting off communications, forcing them into isolated death traps. Zalvar's breathing was heavy. They're predicting our every move. Drenak's eyes darted across the tactical display. It's like they know our fleet doctrine better than we do. Then, a new message flashed on the bridge's main screen. Zarkith Empire Fleet Status. Total warships, 50. Destroyed, 19. Disabled, 7. Captured, 5. Retreating, 11. Remaining functional ships, 8. Zalvar felt a chill crawl up his spine. In under an hour, the humans had reduced his fleet to nothing. Suddenly, the bridge doors exploded inward. Smoke and metal shards flew through the air as human soldiers stormed inside. They wore dark armor, their helmets featureless. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Drenak reached for his sidearm. A single shot rang out. He collapsed. Zalvar's blood turned to ice. He turned, hands raised, as one of the human soldiers stepped forward. The helmet retracted, revealing the human face. Cold, expressionless. Zalvar's voice was barely a whisper. Who are you? The human's blue eyes locked onto his. He spoke in perfect Zarkathian. I am Commander Elias Voss of the Terran Defense Force. His voice was calm, unwavering. Your war is over. Zalvar's knees nearly buckled. The Zarketh do not surrender. Voss tilted his head. Surrender, he chuckled. Then he leaned in closer. His next words made Zalvar's blood freeze. We're not here for your surrender. The human soldiers raised their weapons. We're here for a lesson. The screen behind them lit up. Zalvar's heart pounded as he saw a live feed. Human ships weren't just fighting the Zarketh fleet. They were tracking the retreating ships, hunting them down one by one. Zalvar gasped. No, you can't. Voss's expression didn't change. Your empire thought war was simple. Power over weakness. He gestured around the bridge. Now you understand war is something else entirely. Zalvar's voice trembled. What is it then? Voss's eyes burned with something cold. War is survival. The last thing Zalvar saw was the barrel of a Terran rifle. Ground warfare nightmare. The Zarketh had fought on many worlds. They had crushed countless civilizations beneath their boots. Their soldiers were strong, their weapons brutal. They believed no species could match them in ground combat. Then they landed on Earth, and the nightmare began. The first mistake. General Krava of the Zarketh ground forces stood inside his command dropship, watching the invasion unfold. Thousands of Zarketh soldiers poured from massive troop carriers, landing in key locations across Earth: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, and more. Human cities were sprawling and advanced, but Krava saw no organized defense, no energy shields, no planetary barriers. Pathetic, he muttered. They'd crumble like the others. But something felt wrong. Usually, when the Zarketh invaded, the enemy ran. But here, on Earth, the humans were watching. Krava frowned. His troops moved through the streets, weapons raised. Buildings stood empty. No civilians screamed. No armies clashed against them. It was as if the humans had simply disappeared. A chill ran through Krava's spine. Where is their resistance? Then, the first Zarketh soldier vanished. 1 second, he was there, scanning a dark alley. The next, a shadow moved, and he was gone. His weapon clattered to the ground. His squad turned, confused. Takar. Silence. Then, another soldier fell. A thin wire wrapped around his neck and yanked him into the darkness. His gurgled screams were cut short. Panic spread through the ranks. Zarketh forces closed in, forming defensive circles. Then, the city itself came alive. Explosions ripped through the streets as human traps activated. Buildings collapsed, blocking escape routes. Windows shattered as unseen snipers fired, picking off Zarketh troops one by one. They had walked into a kill zone. The second mistake. Krava roared into his communicator. Deploy heavy mechs. Burn these streets to the ground. From the dropships, massive Zarketh war machines, three-legged walkers with plasma cannons, stomped into battle. Their weapons fired into buildings, leveling entire blocks. For a moment, the Zarketh believed they had gained control. Then, the EMPs hit. Bright blue pulses rippled across the city. The war machines froze. Their systems crashed. Their legs buckled, sending them toppling into the ruins. And from the smoke, the humans emerged. Not soldiers, hunters. They moved in small, deadly teams. They wore dark armor, blending with the shadows. Their weapons were precise. Short bursts, single shots. Each one counted. Krava's blood ran cold. The Zarketh were used to fighting armies. But this was extermination. The final mistake. Desperation filled Krava's voice. Regroup. Regroup. His forces attempted to fall back, but the streets were a maze. The humans knew them. The Zarketh did not. Krava heard his soldiers screaming. They were being hunted, dragged into alleys, snatched from rooftops, gunned down from the shadows. A transmission crackled through his communicator. A human voice. Cold, merciless. Welcome to Earth. Then silence. Krava knew, at that moment, the war was lost. Not in space, not in the skies, but here, in the ruins of a human city, where the Zarketh had finally met something stronger than themselves. Their own nightmare. The hunters become the hunted. General Krava staggered through the ruined city, his once proud battle armor covered in dust and blood. His forces, what remained of them, were in full retreat. But there was nowhere to run. The humans weren't fighting a war. They were erasing the Zarketh. The collapse. General, we are being overwhelmed. A desperate officer's voice crackled through Krava's communicator. They are inside our command posts. They. Gunfire. A scream. Then silence. Krava's jaw clenched. His forces had landed on this world expecting another conquest. Now, they were scattered, isolated, hunted. He turned to his remaining soldiers, a ragged group of warriors who had never known fear, until now. Their eyes darted wildly, scanning every rooftop, every alley. The humans were ghosts. They struck from nowhere, a whisper of movement, a flicker of motion, a single, perfect shot. One of Krava's elite guards turned, raising his weapon, only for a human combat knife to pierce his throat. He dropped without a sound. Krava's soldiers opened fire, blasting the alleyway, hitting nothing but shadows. They were losing their minds. A new kind of warfare. Krava pressed a button on his wrist communicator. A holographic map flickered to life, showing his entire army's status. His breath caught in his throat. Initial landing force, 250,000 soldiers. Status, 73% killed or captured. Remaining, 27%, scattered, no central command. It was worse than he thought. The Zarketh Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, conquering, enslaving, winning. They had never suffered losses like this. How? Krava whispered. How are they doing this? A voice answered him. Not Zarketh. Human. You invaded the wrong planet. Krava spun around, weapon raised. Nothing. Then his soldiers screamed. The humans were here. They moved too fast, too silent. One moment, his men stood beside him. The next, they were gone, pulled into the darkness. Krava fired wildly, his plasma bolts tearing through the night. No target. Something slammed into him from behind. He hit the ground hard, his rifle skidding away. He rolled over, just in time to see the human standing over him. A black armored figure, face hidden behind a helmet. The symbol of Earth's defense force etched into his shoulder plate. Krava's breath came in short gasps. You are not warriors. The human tilted his head. Then, in perfect Zarkithian, he spoke. No, we are something worse. Krava's blood turned to ice. We are survivors. A bright flash filled his vision. Then, darkness. No mercy. General Krava had always believed in the Zarkith Empire's supremacy. Their fleets ruled the stars, their armies crushed entire worlds, and their enemies knelt before them. But now, on the ruined streets of Earth, Krava lay on his back, disarmed, wounded, defeated, and the humans standing over him showed no mercy. The reckoning. Commander Elias Voss stared down at the alien general. His rifle was steady, his expression cold. The battle had already been won. This was the cleanup. Krava coughed, his golden blood pooling on the ground. You would kill a defenseless enemy. Voss knelt beside him, defenseless. He grabbed Krava's armor and dragged him up, forcing him to look around. The city was burning. Zarkith bodies littered the streets, their weapons useless against human tactics. Some lay slumped in their own fortifications, their blood marking the walls behind them. Others had tried to retreat. None had made it. Voss leaned in, his voice a whisper. You didn't show mercy when you bombed our colonies. Krava's breath hitched. You didn't show mercy when you enslaved entire species. Voss's grip tightened. So tell me, General, why should we? Krava had no answer. The final battle. Across the city, the last remnants of the Zarkith forces made a desperate stand. A few hundred soldiers, trapped in the wreckage of their own landing craft, their backs against a crumbling building. They fired wildly, hoping to hit something. But the humans didn't fight head-on. They struck from the shadows. Explosives detonated beneath Zarkath feet, launching bodies into the air. Sniper rounds silenced commanders before they could even shout orders. Smoke filled the air, choking out vision, forcing the aliens to fire blindly. Then the humans came. Silent, unstoppable. Some Zarkith dropped their weapons, raising their hands, surrendering. But the humans weren't accepting surrenders. This wasn't a war anymore. It was an execution. One by one, the last Zarkith soldiers fell. Their empire had expected a simple victory over a weak species. Instead, they had awakened a nightmare. The message. Back at the command center, Voss stood before a captured Zarkith war terminal. A single message was being transmitted to every remaining Zarkith world. Transmission from Earth. To the Zarkata Empire. You started this war. You brought fire and death to our worlds. You thought we would bow. But now you will learn. Humanity does not bow. We do not break. We survive. We endure. And we never forgive. This war is not over. Now, it is your turn. Voss hit send. The message raced across the stars. A warning. A declaration. Humanity was coming. And the Zarkith had nowhere left to hide. Humanity strikes back. The war had only just begun. The message from Earth spread like wildfire across the Zarkith Empire. Every ruling council, every military officer, every citizen of the once mighty empire saw it. They had believed humanity would fall. They had expected another easy conquest. But what they got was a nightmare that refused to die. Now, the war was no longer about invading Earth. It was about surviving humanity's wrath. The fleet of vengeance. High above Earth, inside the newly seized Zarkath, Dreadnought Doom's spear. Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge, watching as human engineers stripped away alien technology and repurposed it for the coming war. Zarkith warships, once meant to conquer humanity, were now being rewired and reforged into humanity's first interstellar war fleet. One of his officers approached. "Sir, all alien warships captured from the invasion force have been modified. We have full control." Voss nodded. "Good." The officer hesitated. "Sir, where do we strike first?" Voss's eyes narrowed. He turned to the massive galactic map displayed on the main console. The Zarkith Empire was vast, stretching across hundreds of systems. But they had one weakness: pride. They had never defended before. They had only attacked. They did not know what it felt like to be hunted. Humanity was going to teach them. He pointed to a key star system. We start with their strongholds. The fall of Arcthal. Deep in the Zarkith Empire, on the industrial world of Arcthal, Zarkith officers sat in their command centers, watching the battle reports from Earth. Their faces were twisted in disbelief. "This is impossible," one of them growled. "A primitive species cannot. ALERT. Unidentified SHIPS. DETCTED." The warning flashed across every screen. Sirens blared. The officers turned to the nearest display. Their eyes widened in horror. A fleet of Zarkath warships was approaching Arcthal. But something was wrong. The transponders were human. The ships they had sent to conquer Earth had returned, under human control. Before the Zarkath could react, the first orbital bombardments began. Arcthal's skies turned into firestorms as precision human strikes disabled planetary defenses. Communication towers collapsed. Supply lines were severed. Military compounds were obliterated before a single Zarkath soldier could even fire a weapon. Then, the drop pods fell. Human soldiers descended like wraiths, striking military command posts, silencing key officers. Snipers took out planetary governors. The Zarkath had no time to fight back. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's forces were on the receiving end of an invasion. And it was only the beginning. The final warning. Back aboard the Doomspear, Commander Voss watched the battle unfold. Arcthal would fall within hours. The Empire was collapsing. A Zarkith prisoner was brought before him, an admiral captured during the invasion of Earth. The alien looked at the battle, his 4 yellow eyes filled with despair. You cannot do this," the admiral rasped. "You will become monsters." Voss didn't answer immediately. He simply gestured to the burning world below. Then he turned to the admiral and spoke the last words the Zarkith would hear before being sent back to their dying empire. "We are not monsters. We are the consequence of your arrogance." The transmission from Arcthal was sent to every remaining Zarkith world. The message was clear. The war was over. Now, the punishment began. Epilogue. A new era. The Zarkith Empire did not collapse in a single night. But humanity did not stop. System by system, world by world, the Terran forces dismantled their power, not just through war, but through strategy, intelligence, and merciless precision. By the time the last Zarkith world surrendered, their once mighty empire was nothing but scattered remnants. And humanity had risen. From prey to predator, from hunted to hunter. And as the first Terran warships were constructed, not stolen, but built, one thing was certain. Humanity would never be threatened again, and the galaxy would never forget their name.